Well, hello everyone. Um, I'm Ted Blank. I'll be presenting this talk on behalf of Terry Reddy and Walt Morgan and their other friend Butch Fleming. They did an interesting experiment last year in the parking lot of the Motel 6, Super 8 Motel. I was thinking that we should call this a shootout of the One Sigma Motel and get that problem resolved for once and for all. But okay, so let's go to the next slide. This this was a situation in which the three friends found themselves in the hotel parking lot with in possession of three video time inserters, all of which had expired and outdated almanacs. And so they thought to themselves, why don't we take this opportunity to turn on all three of them and videotape the screens and document just what happens when you turn on these three models of VTI that all have to download a new almanac. Uh, I'll cut right to the message, which is please, operators, start your VTIs 15 minutes early and make sure your almanacs are updated before you try to do an occultation measurement. So this entire talk should be completely unnecessary to anyone in this hobby. But if it's of interest, we'll go through what they saw and then raise the question at the end of how can you avoid it. Paul.
I don't mean to ask a question, but it sort of complies with what we've been told before, and that is when you have a Kiwi whose almanac has already been updated, that you need to run your Kiwi 30 minutes before the time stabilizes, before you take occultation data. Is that not correct anymore?
Well, Paul is asking whether you need to run a Kiwi for 30 minutes before even taking time data, and that's not something I was aware of. So let's see if someone on during this talk can come up with an answer to that. Okay, so so next slide, please. We kind of talked about this. There were three video time inserters, a Kiwi with model serial number 1077, a VTI of early. No audio. Uh-huh. Can you hear me now? I have the shuttling bar that appeared after everyone left for lunch. Okay, Brad says we're fine. So Bruce, I think probably rebooting or starting the browser again should be the answer. All right, so we can see it. On we go. Yes, Bob.
Wait, Ted, I brought in just now the original Kiwi. It's down in the box.
Okay, so we have one of those here.
I also have the present.
Yeah. That'll be good. Yeah, if folks haven't seen a Kiwi box, that's interesting just to see what it looks like. So these three boxes are of different vintages. The one that says VTI 127, I think, is a Series 1, and the one that says VTI serial number 600 is a version 3 for the latest version. Okay, go ahead. So put these three on the hood of Larry's Jeep. Get them all ready to hook up to power, start the video camera, make sure all three of them are visible to the video camera, and then start the, I guess it's an iPhone taking video, manned by Terry. There is a video that you can watch. There's a YouTube video here. It's about 8 minutes long. It's kind of hard to understand what's going on, and things happen quickly. So what Terry has done here, very kindly, is taken screenshots of the video and put one on each page of this presentation with an explanation of just what's going on. And we only have those at important moments through the 8-minute video. But once you see this presentation, watching the 8-minute video will make more sense. Yes?
Let me just answer the question on one.
Okay.
I think that completely disagrees with what I heard and I saw online from somebody.
Okay.
A couple of years ago, and I've been doing that religiously.
To wait.
To find out if you shouldn't need to
wait 30 minutes. Well, all right, we'll deal with that at.
We need something from somebody who says if you do have an almanac, you require X amount of time with the GPS running in order to have good time data.
Right.
If you
So
don't have an almanac, how much time do you need? Because I've got
after you get the almanac.
devices that I haven't used. I've only been using one.
Okay, so we'll just have to register that as a good question, and IOTA should answer it. I agree. Yeah.
Walter Morgan told me you gotta run at least 20 minutes.
The
What I heard
Ki-
from Walter Morgan.
That's the Kiwi, right?
Yes.
At least 20 minutes. Okay, we'll ask Walt for an update then. Good point. Okay, next please.
You'll need to repeat the question. It'll be online.
Oh, Yes, the question is whether after receiving an almanac, the Kiwi should be operated for 20 to 30 or some period of time in order for it to provide good timings, even though it already has an updated almanac. And so we'll try to get an answer to that. That's a good question. I'll jump right to lessons learned, which are these were the three presentation slides at the end of the presentation. I moved them up here just to give you an idea of what we're really talking about. So the GPS-driven video time inserters are subject to integer second errors in the inserted time as a consequence of leap second additions that happened since the last almanac was observed. These will correct if 15 minutes of acquisition time precedes event timing, because the almanacs are downloaded every 15 minutes to all GPS receivers. So by waiting 15 minutes or more, you guarantee that you'll be getting at least one almanac download. The question, of course, is what does the device do when it gets the new almanac? And that's what we're here to talk about today. The IOTA VTI version 3 has made the process of the update of the almanac a little easier by displaying an hourglass on the screen if the almanac's out of date, and it disappears when the almanac update occurs. So there's no need to reboot the VTI like we did with earlier models. That indication on the screen just tells you, if you don't see the hourglass, then you know that the almanac is up to date. Okay, next please. So these are the rules of the game. Power up early. Verify with an independent time source. Is that? Oh, I think you have to move the mouse on the other one. Was that this one? There's two things that go wrong here. Yeah. Thank you. Yep. Yeah, it's an in-room problem. Verify with an independent time source if you have one. So get a WWV radio and make sure that things are matching up. The lithium-ion cell in the VTI version 3 keeps a memory of the date and time of the almanac, so it can be compared when it starts up. And it also tells you whether it successfully saved the almanac date and time upon power down when you power it up. So you get a message there. To remain less susceptible, you must confirm the battery status on startup. So you'll see a message that says almanac information was successfully saved at shutdown, and that's the message you want to see.
What battery are you talking about? The built-in one?
That's a built-in one in the VTI version 3, right? And the Kiwi OSD, there's a procedure that has to be run through twice to update the almanac once that almanac download occurs. Next, please. Okay, and another really important reminder, this year, December 31st at 00 UT, or on January 1st, there'll be another leap second inserted into our timing. So if you have a VTI, and for those of us here, it's earlier, so sometime around dinner time, put a video camera on the TV screen and make a recording of what your VTI does during the leap second. I've seen videos that show 59, 59, 60, and then 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, or 59, 59, 59 twice, and then 0, 0. There's all kinds of interesting things. So, you know, whatever version or model you have, whenever it comes as, whenever they're having New Year's in London, take a little camera or your iPhone out and make a recording of what your VTI does. But make sure your almanac's up to date first. Yes, Don.
Your last bullet, does that apply to the Kiwi too?
Don's question is, run your video time inserter for at least 15 minutes soon after the insertion. I'm sure that applies to all models. That would be if you were doing an occultation on New Year's Eve. So it's been seen. It's been done. Next slide, please.
The problem is if there's an occultation that happens to occur between 0 hours UT and 15 minutes UT after the leap second.
Right. Dave says, yeah, that 15-minute window after midnight UT is a problem. Yes, Don.
If you have a Kiwi, if you run it for 15 minutes, you're guaranteed the auto update.
Yeah, yeah. If you reset the Kiwi twice, that's correct. The question is, if you run it for 15 minutes, are you guaranteed to have the almanac updated? And the answer is yes. But make sure you reset it twice until you see the message that says previous times okay. Once you see that message, then future times are also okay, unless you push the button after your occultation and it says use field times because something went wrong in the middle. That's also a possibility. You should always push that button after your event as well to confirm.
I've seen that you can push the button twice within a few minutes after you started up and you get that previous times okay message. Now, what does that indicate compared to pressing it 15 or 20 minutes later?
Yeah, so the question is, if you start up a Kiwi and you push the button twice and it says previous times okay both times, I assume that means that the almanac that it is using is the correct one that it sees downloaded from the satellite.
That reflects what Walter Morgan told Bob.
Okay, so we need a how to use the Kiwi correctly message from Walt. Yeah, that would make sense. Lots of questions. Okay, yep, send it to Walt, and that should be a talk at next year's meeting. Post it on the web too, yeah. Okay, next, thanks. So I mentioned about the run times. So the upper display that you'll see has the Kiwi in it. The lower display has the information, the information from the two VTIs. The VTI 600 was in full screen mode, so it appears on the lowest line, and I'll point this out on the screen. So go ahead, advance to the next slide, and we'll start. So here you see this is the hood of Butch's car, his Jeep. The upper screen here has the Kiwi screen on it, and the lower screen will show two lines. The upper one will be from the older VTI, and the bottom line will be from the newer VTI. So the runtime appears in the upper on the screen here. It will, so this runtime here has been cropped out of subsequent slides, but it's been copied up to the top on the slide by Terry for our edification. Next slide, please.
One VTI has a dead battery?
Apparently, either that or that message might mean the almanac's out of date. I'm not sure. But it was unsuccessful in storing almanac data, so it has no idea what's the right almanac to use. Okay, let's go ahead. So here we're at 39 seconds after applying power. The VTI 600, the Model 3, has acquired 4 satellites, F4, so it's able to report time, but you see the hourglass here is saying that don't trust this time quite yet, because we don't have a good almanac yet. Next slide, please. At 1:46, the earlier VTI has 4 satellites, but it won't report time yet because it requires 5 satellites to report a time. So we have a time from the newer model VTI. We don't have a time yet from the older model VTI, which I think is in position mode anyway. And the Kiwi is still booting up here, or going through its first reset process. Next slide. Okay, at 2:11, the Kiwi is in its 30-second reset cycle, and it's displaying latitude and longitude, so it does have a fix. And the older VTI still doesn't have its enough satellites to provide a time, but the new VTI does. But it still has not updated the almanac yet. Next. At 2:27, the reset cycle for the Kiwi is nearly complete. The older model VTI has been returned to position mode, and it turns out that the older model's almanac, which you see the date here, is more than 2 years old, clearly way out of date. Next slide, please. Okay, the Kiwi is now reporting the time, and the field count of 7:32 indicates that it was reset about 12 seconds before this timestamp of 2 minutes and 48 seconds. Next. We're now at 4 minutes and 6 seconds into this experiment. All 3 of the insiders are reporting times, but all the times are different by integer seconds. Here's the problem. until the almanac is downloaded, nobody knows which ones of these to believe, if any of them. Next slide, please. Thought this was a cool experiment. Okay, and now the camera that's attached to the Kiwi was about to power off because it was set in idle mode, and after 5 minutes, cameras power off. So that's about to go away. Next slide, please. And it'll come back. So we won't see the Kiwi screen for a moment. But go ahead and turn that back on, and then the next slide. And they turned the camera back on, gave it another 5 minutes, and now the Kiwi's back on. Another nice advantage of the VTI, does not require an attached camera to generate the VSync and the video signal. Okay, so that's back. Again, millisecond agreement, but integer second differences. Next slide, please. So now the almanac for the earlier model VTI, this upper line has completed, and so its hourglass warning has been removed. Its integer second has been adjusted to agree with this one, and a message directs the users to correct the earlier times. Subtract 1 second from previous times. So if you had been doing an occultation and you saw this message on your screen after completing but before you powered it down, that's your warning that the times should be adjusted by subtracting 1 second from each time. Next slide, please. Okay, so now the older model VTI has been switched to position mode, and it's not on the screen. It's not showing anything because it takes about 3 seconds after the screen blanks out to refresh the screen with the latitude and longitude information. Next. So we're about 5.5 minutes into the experiment now. The VTI 1077 has been returned to time mode, the older model here. VTI 077, sorry. And this message is still here because we still have not got an updated almanac for the newer model VTI. Next. At 6:59, we reset the Kiwi because its time didn't agree with the other two, and we knew that it had been more than enough time for an almanac to be downloaded. So we reset this Kiwi, and sure enough, it says use field count. At this point, it checks the almanac and says it's out of date. You can't trust those times, so use the field counts to calculate when your DNR times were. And what they assumed was that this error message meant that the almanac download has completed, and that's how the Kiwi learns that the times are incorrect. Next. And that, in fact, appears to be the case. So we press the Kiwi button again and initiate that 30-second cycle. Next slide. We go through the date, time, latitude, longitude. And now once that 30-second cycle completes, the Kiwi is now showing the same time as the other two to the integer second, confirming that that error message at 6:59 was when the Kiwi was able to confirm by receiving a full almanac that, sure enough, I know that the times are wrong now. Next slide, please. Okay, so we switched the earlier model VTI to position mode, and sure enough, we now have a current almanac with the almanac time and date. Yeah, and the one the reason that there's a time difference of 1 second is because the almanac only the position screen only updates every 3 seconds on the VTI boxes. So you don't trust the time on that screen. It's only there for latitude and longitude and elevation. Next. We're about done. So the VTI 600, that's our most recent model, has now been placed into position mode, and the last used indication is not current. I have to admit I'm not, okay, right here. So that is probably the date and time of that almanac. And it is not current, so it's consistent with the continued display of the hourglass. So it's essentially saying I haven't got an updated almanac and I'm not able to let you trust the times that I'm giving you now. Next. Okay, and we initiated a reset cycle on the Kiwi, and we got the message we want to see, previous times okay. And that tells you that you can trust the times from the occultation you just recorded. You should always press that button after your occultation so that you can see this message. If you see a message that says error, use field counts, then that's what you have to do to make sure you don't have a 1 second offset. Next, please. Now they've set latitude and longitude on for both Kiwi and the VTI 600, and they tell us that they're about 13 meters apart, even though they're sitting on the same cart hood. They're obviously not perfect. If the horizontal dilution of precision is 1.5 or less, positional accuracy is typically good enough for IOTA use. For a lower dilution of precision, let it run longer and acquire more satellites, and over time that error circle will shrink. Next, please. Okay. At 812, Kiwi has acquired 8 satellites, and the horizontal dilution of precision is 1.0, so that's about as good as it gets. Next, please. Yeah. At 8:33, all 3 time inserters now agree to millisecond accuracy, and they ended the experiment a few seconds later. My question, though, is why are we still seeing an hourglass here? We have to wait a while more for that to disappear? Yeah, okay.
Got a question on that.
Yeah.
When you get an hourglass, how inaccurate in fractions of a second or a whole second can it be?
So Bob is asking, when you see the hourglass, how much inaccuracy could there be? I think the answer is the milliseconds will be correct when you get enough satellites to show a time, but the integer second will be off by some number of integer seconds. So whole seconds, always whole seconds, yeah.
Basically, it's the number of loop seconds that have been added since the last almanac.
Exactly, it's Bill confirms you're missing some number of leap seconds, and since those are always whole seconds, your error is a multiple of 1 second. But we don't know how many of those, depending on how long it's been since the almanac was updated. There could have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 leap seconds inserted, depending on how long that Kiwi box or VTI has been sitting on your shelf. Well, it wouldn't be plus or minus. It would always be in one direction, and it would always be an integer number of seconds, but we don't know how many. So until the almanac is downloaded, then you know the true time. And yeah. Okay, next slide. There we go. So I've gone through this already. I think I'll just close by reminding everyone that the safest way to stay out of this mess is to set up early. I know Derek would agree, and there are reasons to set up early for equipment and telescopic purposes and video camera purposes. Here's another reason to set up early, to give your GPS time inserter a chance to get its proper almanac, and for you to go through its test cycle enough times to make sure that you're seeing times that you can trust. Question, Steve?
I made a suggestion. Question, I guess, is it sufficient to run the GPS for 15 minutes a couple days ahead of time, assuming there's no leap second inserted between then and event time? Is that acceptable?
So
you've got multiple stations you're going to put out. You don't actually have to turn them all on.
Right. So you asked Walt this question. Is there a response? Okay. So the question we have for Walt, which we'll ask him, is if you run the GPS for long enough to get a good almanac a few days in advance and then turn it off, will the lithium-ion battery and there have been no leap seconds inserted in the intervening days, do you now have a confidence in the thing? So we'll try to ask Walt for answers for that, for VTI and for the Kiwi, because I don't believe the Kiwi has a battery in it. Yeah, I don't. I suspect you have to run the Kiwi each time.
Put in the battery into VTI that we have a reliable recording of the updates.
Exactly.
And I think the Kiwi reverts to its manufacturing time each time you turn it on.
Very likely that the Kiwi reverts to the manufacturer time. So you have to let it run. Yeah. So we'll confirm that. But I think that makes sense with what folks generally know about it. That yeah. Okay. No, it doesn't. Byron?
Thank you. If I have a video camera hooked to my field laptop, will this device hook up USB to USB port in my laptop to combine with video?
Ah, good question.
How does it transcribe onto the video screen?
Excellent question, and the answer to that will be given by the Dunhams next talk, I believe, about how to get analog data into a USB form onto your computer. Tomorrow's talk.
Well, the answer to your question
So.
is you plug your video signal into the time inserter, and it comes out of the time inserter into whatever you're using to record the signal. That's
right.
Yeah.
So we'll. Right.
So I've got a newer USB camera that hooks directly into my laptop.
Okay. So yeah, he has a camera that has a USB cable coming out of it directly, so that there's no USB port on the VTI. It's no way of doing it yet.
There are special, there's a system called ADVS.
There you go.
Built in Australia.
Right.
Built 5 of them.
The ADVS system is designed for digital cameras, like right. But only certain cameras, only for the fleet cameras. Okay, thanks everybody. I don't see questions online, so appreciate it.
There's a comment in there that basically is different from the 4 numbers we've been talking about, and that's how long to run the Kiwi. So Brad says 5 to 10 minutes, you just heard 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and 30 minutes. So this is all over the map, so what is the right question? So I put that online asking the server.
There you go. Okay, well thank you very much, Ted. That's a big help.